On this week's NESN Patriots podcast, we break down the many things that went wrong in New England's Week 9 loss to the Washington Commanders. We also look ahead to the team's Germany game against the Indianapolis Colts and debate whether another loss this week could cost Bill Belichick his job. Hello and welcome back to the NESN Patriots podcast. My name is Zach Cox, joined as always by Dakota Randall. We are recording this one day after the Patriots Week 9 matchup with the Washington Commanders. And if you think back a couple weeks ago when the Patriots were still somewhat potentially possibly relevant in the playoff race, the argument for that was, well, look at the teams they're playing in the second half of the season. They got Washington, they've got the Giants, they've got the Colts, they've got the Broncos. This is positioned for them to go on a little bit of a run if they stay above water here. It's now clear that they can't even beat those teams. The Patriots lost this game 20-17 at home to a team they were favored against. I don't think there is any game against any opponent in the NFL at this point where the Patriots can go in and you would say, I feel very confident they are going to win this game. It's where they are as a franchise. They're the worst team in the AFC now by a somewhat substantial margin. And it's hard to really see any light at the end of the tunnel after this. Dakota, coming out of this game, what was your kind of number one reaction as they finished things off yesterday at Gillette?
Yeah, I mean, I think just that the season's over, right? I think that's I don't have the numbers in front of me. I was trying to look it up while you were talking to see if there's any team that started 2-7 and made the playoffs. But either way, yeah, I think we talked about it last week where, you could still definitely see a path toward getting back into playoff contention if you won those 3 straight games against the Commanders, Colts, and Giants, because you'd be at 5-6, and then take your chances. The AFC's kind of muddled up this year. You start getting into tiebreakers, like crazier things have happened. But 2-7 is too much. But more importantly, it's just, nobody would ever look at this team and have any reason to believe that they had that kind of turnaround or fight in them. If anything, it feels like it could get worse before it gets better. You see little signs that things are starting to unravel between, a few weeks back, Jalen Mills complaining about playing time. The stuff yesterday with Jack Jones and JC Jackson, and Jack Jones tweeting or liking tweets after the game. All these kind of things that are happening, and then the way they're playing, the missed tackles feel like an effort issue, like a team letting go of the rope. You add all that stuff up, and it doesn't look good for the Patriots. They are officially bottoming out. And then I guess, the main thing going forward is Bill Belichick's job status, which feels still like a long shot that it'll change, but nevertheless, it'll be a conversation, and rightly so, because any other coach would have been fired at this point, honestly.
I mean, any other coach probably would have been fired maybe a year or two ago at this point. But I think that's the most worrying thing about this from a Patriots perspective is, and we've been kind of saying it for a couple of weeks now, there's no obvious fix for this team. There's no saying, man, if they just clean up this one area, they get this one guy back from injury, then I think they'll be okay. That was kind of the case early in the season when they were having those close competitive losses. Now it's just the problems are so widespread. It's on offense, it's on defense, it's on special teams, especially yesterday, late in that game with some of those special teams errors. It's a personnel issue. It seems to be a coaching issue. It seems to be a buy-in issue. It's hard to see, as I said, hard to see a path forward for this team, a path back to respectability. And we're only halfway through the season. There's a very long way to go for this Patriots team. And it certainly seems like things are going to get worse, not get better as they navigate this back half of the schedule.
Real quick, I found it. The only team to ever start 2-7 and make the playoffs were the Commanders in 2020 when they were the football team. They're the only team that's done it.
And I think they finished 7-9 that year, right? Yeah. 7-9 or 7-8. Yeah. So that's not going to be good enough to get the any team into the playoffs in the AFC this year. So yeah, it's been clear for a couple of weeks now, but this is certainly not a playoff caliber Patriots team. But let's get into this game itself before we look toward the future a little bit later in this episode. We're going to go 2 down, 1 up since this was a Patriots loss. Dakota, I'll let you start. Who are your 2 down from this game?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mac Jones for my first down, and then the third down defense. for my other one. Really, I think, certainly you can make excuses for Mac Jones in this game. He was victimized by some poor receiver play. Jalen Reagor had that drop on the long pass. Tyquan Thornton had a route issue. There was stuff like that sort of all day, and he's down Kendrick Bourne and Devontae Parker, so it looked like he didn't have any trust in his weapons. And I don't necessarily blame him, but at the same time, if you're a franchise quarterback, this is the kind of game you have to win. You got to find a way. There were plays to be made. Obviously, that fourth down to Tyquan Thornton at the beginning of the game, where they complete that. Not only are they deep in Washington territory, he might have had a chance to run in for a touchdown. And the Patriots, as this bad team that needs everything to go perfectly, that's where these games can swing. They get up to an early lead there. The complexion of the game changes. They're no longer a team that can just sort of win in spite of those kind of slow starts. They need to get out to a fast start, and they weren't able to there. And I think that play got the ball rolling. He could have been picked off 2 more times. The one at the end, I don't really blame him on. But he also had the underthrow to Ramondre Stevenson on the deep pass, threw behind Ezekiel Elliott at one point. I just thought overall it was kind of an on-brand performance for him, and not in a good way. I thought this was honestly, to me, just watching it, one of the worst games he's had all season, including those 2 blowouts to the Cowboys and the Saints. So I thought, Mac Jones, this was not a good game for him. And the other one I have is the third down defense. I guess you could say they got better in the second half. Where I think the Commanders wound up finishing going like 9 of 16.
I think they started off 7 for 10, and then they ended up finishing 9 for 17, I believe. They did get some stops late in the game, but early on for the first, it seemed like 2.5 quarters, they just couldn't stop anybody. And it was the third and longs too. That was the biggest issue. Yeah,
it was 9 of 17 overall. In the first half especially, it was 6 of 9. And as you said, some big gains in long scenarios. These are all the third down conversions in the first half for the Commanders. A 2-yard run on 3rd and 1, a 26-yard pass on 3rd and 7, a 9-yard run on 3rd and 1, a 13-yard pass on 3rd and 10, a 24-yard run by Sam Howell on 3rd and 23, which really was probably the worst play of the game. And then a 16-yard pass on 3rd and 10. And then the first opportunity the Commanders got on 3rd down in the second half, Patriots gave up a 26-yard completion on 3rd and 8. So it was really, really bad. Maybe like the worst third down defense I've ever seen. And again, it just sort of reeked of a team that's, either starting to let go of the rope, already has, or just doesn't have much faith in anything they're doing on either side of the ball, including defense.
Yeah, the run by Howell was just unconscionable in this game. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's a guy that can move around a little bit, but this is not a quarterback that should be ripping off a 24-yard run on 3rd and 23, especially because Jalen Mills and Adrian Phillips both had him dead to rights about 10 yards downfield. They both got their hands on him, both slipped off of him, allowed him to run for that first down. Those are 2 guys that haven't seen a ton of playing time on defense this season. And certainly it's probably not going to change after a play like that. The missed tackles have just been a huge issue for this team for weeks now. I mean, even in the Bills game, for all they did well, there were a lot of problems with missed tackles in that game. Certainly an issue against Miami last week as well. And then in this game, there were 3 or 4 instances where guys are just slipping off ball carriers or taking wrong steps or just kind of showing, I don't know if it was lackadaisical effort or just poor technique or what it was, but this is not the kind of tackling that we're used to from a Patriots team. And I think it's really hurting their defense in these last couple of games. The secondary as a whole, even like 2 weeks ago, this looked like a strength of the team. And now they're just getting carved up by basically everybody they play in the last 2 weeks. Sam Howell, I think he finished with 325 yards and he had 6 passes of 20 plus yards, 6 pass completions of 20 plus yards. That's the most the Patriots have given up this season. The previous most was 5 last week. So they're just a big play allowing machine at this point, and the missed tackles are definitely a major culprit in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's everybody. It's not just somebody like J.C. Jackson or Jack Jones. It's everyone. It's Kyle Duggar. It's Jalen Mills. It's Adrian Phillips. It's Jabril Peppers. It's the cornerbacks. It's Marte Mapu. It's everybody. And so again, you have to look at is it an effort issue? Is it a commitment issue? And 2, just coaching. I mean, are we are we sure that any of these assistant coaches are that good at their jobs? Most notably to me, Troy Brown. I just think you continue to look at Patriots receivers and the sloppy mistakes that they make with the spacing and route running, and I'm like, what kind of coaching are they getting there? I know that's a different topic, but I just think, the more you look at the way the defensive backs are playing lately, it seems like it's an effort and coaching issue.
Yeah, those kind of dovetail into my two downs, so I'll jump right into those. First one, Jack Jones. You could kind of tie this in with Jack Jones and JC Jackson because both of them started this game on the bench. Jackson didn't play for the first 2 defensive series. Jones didn't play for the first 3 defensive series and then barely played at all in the second half. He played the first series after halftime, then didn't see the field again for the rest of the game. Bill Belichick hasn't said anything of note about these pseudo benchings, role reductions, whatever you want to call them. There was a report from Jeff Howe over at The Athletic that they were based on recent poor performance. And both of those guys were players who struggled against the Dolphins the previous week. And I mean, as I just said, the cornerback group looked like a strength a couple of weeks ago, even after losing Christian Gonzalez. You looked at it and you said, all right, they've got no more Christian Gonzalez, no more Marcus Jones. That hurts. But you've got Jonathan Jones, you got JC Jackson, Jack Jones, Miles Bryant. That's a pretty solid group to roll with when everybody's playing at their best. But now it just seems like a total nosedive for Jackson and especially Jack Jones. I mean, Jackson ended up playing pretty close to his normal workload after he entered the game. But he hasn't looked like himself in the last couple of weeks. And who knows what's going on behind the scenes with either of those two players. It certainly seems like there's some discontent in the locker room, in the meeting room, whatever you want to call it. Neither of them spoke with reporters after the game. You mentioned the Jack Jones social media activity after the game. It seems like kind of a powder keg in there. And again, as I keep saying, there's still half a season left to go. So there's plenty of time for this to devolve even further. And then my other down over on the offensive side, another second-year pro, another 2022 draft pick, Tyquan Thornton, came back from a healthy scratch last week, played in this game, was very active early in this game. He saw 4 targets over the Patriots' first 3 series, then didn't play the rest of the game. Mac Jones targeted him on back-to-back third downs. Both of those were incomplete. On at least one of them, it looked like Thornton ran a pretty sloppy route, which he kind of admitted after the game when he was talking to the media. And Bill Belichick said today that his decision not to play him after that wasn't based on an injury. He was dealing with a foot injury, I believe it was, and it looked like he was a game time decision. But Belichick said no, he was available. So that's just a flat out benching for a player who just really has brought next to nothing to this offense in the season and a half that he's been here. The crazy thing is Thornton's stat line from this game, 1 catch for 7 yards, was actually his best stat line of the season. In his first 2 games, he had 1 catch for 6 yards and 1 catch for 2 yards. And Jalen Reagor wasn't much better in this game either. 6 catches or 6 targets, 1 catch, 11 yards, a really bad drop on a Mac Jones deep ball. The receiving core is just a complete and total mess right now. The only person who was giving the Patriots any sort of high-end consistency was Kendrick Bourne. He's out for the season. I know we both like Demario Douglas a lot. I think he has a really bright future. I think he's had a solid season, but he's not a guy that can carry this group at this point in his career. He's had only around 50 receiving yards in each of the last couple of games. It's just it's bad for the receiving core right now. And once again, as with many things with this team, I don't know how they fix it, and I don't know how it gets any better.
Yeah, you kind of said it all. I don't have too much to add. I mean, it's the receiving group is in dire straits, and of course, it is a huge contributing factor in the way Mac Jones has been playing. But at some point, whether it be Jones elevating them, the players getting better on their own, or the coaches making a difference, like you would think at some point here it would start to look better. But it's only gotten worse, and it's as dysfunctional as like anything I've ever seen. It's really bad. And just one quick note on Jack Jones, we should at least mention what the tweet was that he liked. I think it was he's since unliked it. I just looked. He has unliked it. I think it was someone that said, at this point you should have just pleaded guilty or something. Obviously referencing the plea deal for his arrest in the summer. So Jack Jones essentially saying, he'd rather have pled guilty and been wherever that would have taken them, been a part of what's going on right now with the Patriots. He also yesterday, I think must have been after unliking it, just tweeted, "Have y'all noticed I don't respond to y'all? Why would I start today? I talk to my friends and family, and that's it." So obviously him saying, he's not going to respond to fans who are asking him about what happened today. So yeah, some people starting to go off the reservation, which isn't good. And then with the receivers, there's not much left to say at this point. It's really, really bad.
And one last note on the receivers. It was interesting hearing some of Mac Jones' comments after the game. He didn't take any shots at any of his teammates, didn't have any wasn't throwing anybody under the bus, but he was asked about about the tight windows that he's consistently having to throw into that are smaller than what a lot of NFL quarterbacks have. And part of his response to that was, yeah, that's a good question. That's a good point. And when you look into it, that is a good point. If you look at one of the ESPN Analytics has an open metric, which combines a bunch of different player tracking data to essentially measure how often a player gets open and how probable a catch should be on any given route that he runs. Entering this week, there's 111 qualified receivers and tight ends. Basically, everybody on the Patriots ranked 90th or worse. That's Demario Douglas, Mike Gesicki, Hunter Henry, Devontae Parker. Juju Smith-Schuster didn't have enough targets to qualify anymore, but he was dead last in that metric a week ago. And Tyquan Thornton and Jalen Reagor also don't have enough targets, but based on watching them play this season, you have to imagine that they would rank similarly. So again, Mac Jones has been far from perfect this season. He was far from perfect in this game. He did certainly have some missed opportunities, but I can see how it would be difficult to work with the receiver play that he's getting. It speaks to the talent and also, especially with these younger guys, I agree with you. It speaks to the coaching, both the development behind the scenes and the game planning on Bill O'Brien's part. It seems like there has to be a way to get these guys open more frequently than they are. You see teams with similar talent levels have a little bit more success than the Patriots are having in this passing game. It's just been dysfunctional is a very good word for it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. All right, moving along from this game, because I don't know, there's really not a whole hell of a lot to break down from a game like this. I liked your use of gross in your headline last night to describe this game. That was pretty spot on, I believe. But now
we're now losing at home to bad teams with young quarterbacks who are trying to tank. So
yeah, we should have mentioned that earlier. The Commanders just traded away two of their best players in this game or before this game in Chase Young and Montez Sweat. So I guess we can get into our positives from this game if you want to. You want to do the ups, or you want to just jump straight to next week?
I think we just do it very quickly. My one up is Ramondre Stevenson. I thought, after kind of a slow start to the season, he's back to looking like, the best or, most dynamic player on offense. Him and kind of Demario Douglas battling for that honor. But he obviously had the 64-yard touchdown run in this game, finished with 9 carries for 87 yards. He had how many catches?
6, I believe.
4 catches for 42 yards. So a good game for him. Made the big splash play for the Patriots, and he's been really good recently.
Yeah, mine is the offensive line. You saw it. You thought this could have been a bit of a dicey game for them, even against a Commanders team that didn't have Young, didn't have Sweat. The Patriots didn't have Trent Brown in this game, who has been their best offensive lineman all season. I thought Connor McDermott stepped in and played well, again, against the defense that was missing its top 2 pass rushers. He did have one mistake that he got bailed out from when he allowed that sack on Mac Jones, the strip sack that ended up getting reversed because of a roughing the passer penalty, which was a pretty weak call in my opinion and in a lot of people's opinion. But that was essentially the only time Mac Jones was hit all game. The Commanders finished without any official sacks and only 1 quarterback hit. Even against a team with that level of talent, given all the issues the Patriots have had on the offensive line this season, I think that was a positive performance. Also some great blocks by guys like Sidney Sau, David Andrews, Michael Wenu on the long touchdown run by Ramondre Stevenson. So for once in a Patriots loss, offensive line play was not a detriment to them in this game.
No. And I think in recent weeks, the offensive line has not been great by any means, but I think it's been far less of an issue than it was earlier in the season. They've largely settled things down there. I just think the accumulation of all the pressure Mac Jones dealt with last season and early in this season, like, you don't just get over that overnight. I think it has sort of permanently turned him into a jittery, frantic quarterback.
The back foot throws, you're still seeing them. That was the deep ball to Stevenson that was underthrown. It was just kind of, I'm going to throw this off my back foot for no real reason. It's definitely an accumulation of all the pressure that he's been getting.
Yeah. I think it's just like, it's too little too late at this point, but it is nice to see that, they can plug in someone like McDermott, and he's able to kind of, keep things going there a little bit. And you wonder just how long Trent Brown could stay out now with his free agency coming up in the offseason, and how bad he looked in the locker room after that game in Miami. Maybe he also sits this week and gets the bye. But you wonder, like, if he doesn't seem like someone who would rush back to get back on the field given where the team is, and I'm not sure the team would put him in that position either, but we'll have to see.
So looking ahead to this week, the Patriots are flying to Germany on Thursday. They are playing the Indianapolis Colts in Frankfurt on Sunday. The Colts are not a Super Bowl contender by any means. They most likely won't be in the playoffs at the end of the season, but they have been feisty. They've won a couple of games. They beat the Panthers on Sunday. Gardner Minshew has been doing Gardner Minshew things. They're going to score a lot of points. They're going to stay in a lot of games. And as we mentioned off the top, the Patriots can't really feel confident about their ability to beat anybody at this point. I believe they opened as either 1.5 or 2 point underdogs for this game, which makes sense given where both of those franchises are. But this game itself, I'm expecting it not to be especially exciting, but it will be a potentially important kind of inflection point in this whole season, because after this game, the Patriots are on a bye week. Typically, in the past, if you're going to fire a coach during the season, a lot of times you do that before a bye week to give the whatever replacement staff ample time to kind of reset and reassess. I don't think that that's going to happen with Bill Belichick, even if they lose this game, but it's something that has to be a consideration, I think. Even if not from Robert Kraft's side, at least from as a Patriots fan, as a Patriots reporter, whatever group you fall into, if they lose this game, you kind of have to be on Bill watch, I think, just because the team has been so bad so far this season. There's no real fix in sight. I don't know. If it's going to happen during the season, it's probably going to happen next week. Again, I don't think that's going to happen because that would remove the possibility of a potential Bill Belichick trade that everybody's been talking about over the last week or so. But I don't know. A loss to the Colts in this game would really be, we've mentioned rock bottom seemingly like 5 or 6 times this season. That would be rock bottom for Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And you have to wonder how Robert Kraft would respond to that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be rock bottom from a record standpoint, but I think this game against the Commanders was worse. I mean, I think, just because it's at home, Ron Rivera is now 3-0 against Belichick, which is kind of,
I saw that. It's surprising.
Yeah. Ron Rivera and Tua Tagovailoa are combined 9-0 against Bill Belichick. But I think the Commanders game, yeah, I think that it'll be hard to top that one unless the Colts just completely blow doors. I think the Colts have some good players on offense. I think Gardner Minshew is a perfectly fine backup, who is starting caliber depending on which team he's on. So I don't, he's a little bit of a roller coaster, but I can totally see him not only beating the Patriots but a lot of teams. And now they got Jonathan Taylor back. They got some good weapons on offense. So I think that is going to be a tough game for the Patriots. But to your point, if they lose it, it's really about the timing more than anything, because I feel like you're not going to win that game and then fire Bill Belichick. That would be weird. I feel like if they lose, it opens the door, and to do it, to give whoever it is, Gerard Mayo presumably is the interim head coach, the bye week to sort of get things in order. really 2 weeks to prepare for the next game. That would be the perfect timing. And you're right. If it doesn't happen after that, then we can probably safely say that it's not going to happen for the rest of the season. But your point about the trade is good. I hadn't thought about that one. I always just sort of thought it's a respect thing. I'd be stunned if Kraft put Belichick through that kind of public embarrassment. But the trade is also a good point. But again, that also assumes that Belichick wants to continue coaching next year. I would assume he does, given the contract stuff that he very clearly leaked to the press. But we'll just have to see.
Yeah, and all of the reporting that's been out there about the possibility of a midseason firing has seemed to indicate that would be very surprising, even to the people who have been kind of in the weeds on this reporting and speculation over the last couple of weeks and months. It doesn't seem like that's something that Kraft would do to a kind of a figure of Belichick's status. It does seem like if that era does come to an end, it would happen a little more gracefully. But I don't know. I mean, it seems like Robert Kraft is very clearly unhappy and borderline fed up with the direction and the current standing of his franchise right now. He's essentially said as much publicly in the last couple of off seasons. So I don't know. It's continuing to trend downward with, again, no real end in sight. So I think it would ease a lot of nerves in the short term if the Patriots just go and win a boring game against the Colts in Germany. But if that doesn't happen, and if they lose, especially if they lose in humiliating fashion, it's going to be a very, very interesting bye week for this team.
Yeah, and just related to all of that, and I'm writing something about this today, but really this was a brutal week for the Patriot Way, not just here but also around the NFL. I mean, the week began with Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler and Mick
Lombardi? Yeah.
Lombardi. 3 former Belichick lieutenants, right, all getting fired in Vegas. With the reports that that players have sort of become disillusioned by the overbearing, zero tolerance culture created by McDaniels, who obviously learned everything he got from Belichick.
They were smoking cigars in the locker room after this game.
Right, I'm getting there.
The Raiders players are very, very happy to no longer be coached by Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, so the week began with that, and which obviously wasn't great. And then you get to Sunday and the Patriot, and we find out more about that McDaniels thing where he had the meeting a few days prior, and Antonio Pierce said something about being with the Giants and beating the Patriots in 2007. Jake Laser reported that McDaniels then stepped up and said something like, "Don't you say that about the Patriots," which, again, he's sort of invoking the Patriot Way there and sort of defending them, and that sort of further polarize the locker room. And then the Patriots go out and, like I said, lose to a bad team that's trying to tank with a young quarterback. And then the Raiders go out, win their first game, free of the whole Patriot Way, and like you said, smoke cigars and sort of dance on the grave of it. The week starts today with all the ESPN talk shows sort of doing the same thing, mocking the whole Patriot Way. And so it's just, and now we're talking about Bill Belichick's job status. Like it's been a bad week for that whole narrative of the Patriot Way. And the one other thing I would add to it is, it's kind of failing its final test, right? Where, it just because the Patriot Way, whatever that means, worked for 20 years doesn't mean it actually stood the test of time, because, it needed to hold up under scrutiny, and we needed to see whether it worked when the team sunk into mediocrity or worse, right? We know that, for instance, Dan Campbell's method can work with a losing franchise. Does Bill Belichick's method work with a losing franchise? Or is it, was it really all it was cracked up to be, or was it a house of cards that crumbled when the number 12 card got pulled, right? And I think at this point, it sure looks like that is the case. And it just doesn't, it looks like it's not aging well, for a lack of a better phrase. So I think, it's kind of passing its final test or failing its final test. Like I said, it's just overall not been a good stretch for the Patriots Way.
Yeah. Also related to that whole McDaniels Raiders thing, it was very telling to me that Mark Daniels' choice for an interim head coach to replace McDaniels was one of the only people on that staff that did not have any connection to the Patriots or McDaniels or the Patriot Way or New England.
You said Mark Daniels.
Mark Daniels.
Yeah,
Oh, Mark Davis. Shout out Mark Daniels, masslive.com.
yeah, I was gonna
Mark,
say,
Mark Davis's choice. Yeah, point still stands. Raiders very clearly trying to distance themselves from the Patriot Way. And honestly, that kind of seems like good business these days based on how everything related to the Belichick coaching tree has gone lately. But that will do it for this week's edition of the NESN Patriots podcast. You can follow me on X at Zach Cox NESN. You can follow Dakota at Dak Randall. I will be in Germany for this Patriots game. I should get in there on Friday, so you can follow along for all the Patriots happenings from across the pond. And keep it on NESN.com, as always, for full Patriots coverage during the lead up and following that game on Sunday.